Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. Today I wanted to talk to you about whether narcissism is preventable or not. It's such a debilitating problem that knowing how to prevent it would be immensely helpful. The truth is, nobody knows. While it's true that abuse creates most pathologically narcissistic people, it's also true that many people endure abuse and do not become pathologically narcissistic. The difference probably lies in each person's individual makeup and possibly genetic structure as well. They are studying the genetics in this area, and hopefully we will have some answers on that one day. Aside from that, individual makeup probably accounts for more in this area than people might realize. For all their similarities, narcissists are still all different people. They are still individual human beings. They're not all the same. People often ask, what would a narcissist do in this situation? Or what will the narcissist do if I do that? I don't know the answer to that question because I don't know the person. I could guess, but that's all it would be, and your guess probably be better than anyone's because you know the person and no one else does. Some narcissists cheat, others do not. Some narcissists become murderers. Others have never physically hurt anybody. Some narcissists are successful at their jobs. Others can't even hold one. Some narcissists brag, boast, and bluster. Others whine, cry, and cling. They're all different, and when it comes to predicting behavior, it probably comes down to that more than anything. This also might have a lot to do with the conversation about preventing narcissism. Some children are just born needing more. They need more attention. They need more support. They are more sensitive. They are more fragile. These may be the children that become narcissistic adults when these core needs are not met. Things might affect them more. They may internalize hurt more deeply. The things that are sufficient for other children may not be enough for them. The right approach with one child might be the wrong approach with another child. There are so many variations to the human creature that it's impossible to guess or address them all. There is one thing we do know, and that is that abuse certainly seems to play a role in creating narcissistic people. That is well documented. The word abuse, though, is misleading in some ways. While it's true that the more recognized forms of abuse are all well represented in this equation, such as emotional, physical, sexual, and verbal, it's also true that indulgence and spoiling are often left out of the story. These things are abuse, especially in this context. Neglecting a child is abuse too, and it isn't just physical neglect like not bathing or feeding the child. There's emotional neglect as well, and that might be the number one type of abuse we see in the backgrounds of pathologically narcissistic adults. Most kinds of abuse are the caregiver or parent doing something, their actions, such as hitting or cursing. Neglect is inaction. It's abuse caused by the parent or other caregiver not doing something. Emotional neglect, therefore, is the parent's failure to correctly care for and validate the child's feelings. It bears mentioning here that emotional neglect can be inadvertent on the parent's part. They might not realize that they're hurting the child. Too often as parents, people forget how fragile and sensitive children really are. This could also answer the question of how narcissistic people exist who seem to have had a non-abusive childhood. Emotional neglect is not an event or an incident, therefore it's not really remembered. It's the pervasive lack of something, which means it's basically impossible to see. You can't see what isn't there. Children are narcissistic, remember. In other shows, we've talked about how because they suffer from arrested development, narcissistic adults still see other people as mirrors reflecting their self-image back to them because they don't have a self-image of their own. In the case of children, the parent or other caregiver is the mirror that reflects the child's image back to them so that they can learn to develop self-esteem, self-worth, and be a balanced, well-adjusted person. Though it is not the negative self-image reflected back by more blatant types of abuse, it may be just as damaging, if not more, because the reflection of the child's self-image from an emotionally neglectful parent is in fact no image at all. While emotional neglect is often combined with other types of abuse, it can also occur by itself. When children are not validated, they can become insecure, anxious, and depressed. They may feel rejected, unloved, unseen, unheard, unwanted, and unable to actually be an individual. More than anything, they don't believe they matter because what is reflected to them about themselves is essentially nothing. They have a hard time creating an identity, trusting their perceptions and emotions, and they're often unable to acknowledge their own emotions. Depending on how early the neglect started, they could end up with an attachment disorder or worse. When emotional neglect is also combined with other problems or other types of abuse, of course, the effects will be much worse. And if emotional neglect happens to one of the more needier children, the problems are just going to be doubled. Love isn't just about what you don't do, it's also about what you do do. If people want to prevent narcissism, the best thing they can do is discipline their children consistently and fairly. And remember, discipline is both punishment and reward. Give them rules, give them boundaries on their behavior, and listen. Listen to their feelings, validate them, show them that their feelings are important, even when you're busy or it seems silly. Watch them play video games and exclaim over their victories. Hang their pictures on the fridge and tell them it's the best damn horsey you ever saw. Watch that funny cat video for the 6,000th time with them and laugh like it's the first time it ever happened. Kids of all ages want their parents' attention and validation, even teenagers. You're the most important person in the world to them, no matter what they say. Show them they are valued, that they're wanted, that they're seen, that they're loved, that they matter. And no one should just assume that what they're doing is enough, because as we've seen, so often it isn't. And I just want to state for the record that this is not about guilt. It's not about guilt tripping anybody. It's not about anything like that. We all do what we can, and when we know better, we do better. The purpose of this is education. I hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions. So please keep those coming. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you and have a wonderful day.